stupid that they don't understand, hey, there's consequences for future violence. And so I just want to make sure we're putting our money into something really comprehensive here that's getting at the core issue, and that we're using data and follow-up and continuous process improvement to make sure we're actually getting results and able to measure those and specifically tie those to the investments that are happening. So I don't mean to make you feel beat up on this. That's not the intent here. I just wanted to express that I think there's some concerns you've heard about these investments, and I hope we can follow up offline and talk more about this, and so I can better understand the request here and see to it that ultimately we're getting our taxpayers' money's worth.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, there will be a presentation on our youth violence prevention work at the HECE committee Monday, I think. So coming right up.
Before you launch, okay. Just wanted to point out, I don't know if yours is most of a comment or did you need a response? Okay, thank you. And Councilmember Gordon.
So I just wanted to respond a little bit about some of these items because I've tracked this very carefully as chair of the Health Committee and also as serving on the Youth Violence Prevention Executive Committee. And I really appreciate what the council president said about some of the nonprofit organizations that were operating out there. And I think that's one of the reasons why we decided to hold back on funding a lot of organizations until we could bring them, see which ones could actually have the capacity to handle some of these issues, and some just don't, and they're good intentions and they're working hard, but just to get to that certain level where they can handle it is a challenge. And so some of these little bits of money is just to help build that capacity and see if we can't help grow some organizations to take some leadership. And we'll see. The group violence intervention model is actually something that we arrived at because of the uptick and because we're really coming back on a crisis. Tracking this for many years, we saw for several years decline in youth violence and homicides and gun injuries, I think up until 13. I think there was one year there, was it 2013, where we had no juvenile homicide technically. But now we're seeing a dramatic, I think it's a dramatic and significant uptick, and especially in certain parts of the city. And so that's why this focused group intervention model is something that we're turning to. We've talked about things like this. Project Ceasefire kind of used this concept, but this is actually something that the National Network for Safe Communities from John Jay College is leading on, and other groups. So it's a best practices model, and there's federal funding to help us do it. And really what it is you identify the most likely perpetrators and victims of the gun violence. So we're going right to the most at-risk individuals to try to intervene, both with both with an understanding of what kind of consequences you could have. And actually, it's the graphic understanding of those consequences that gets some people to change because they really aren't that aware of them. I just heard yesterday a story about an emergency room doctor who basically said, I've seen you 3 times now. The next time I see you, you're going to be dead if this keeps up. And that seemed to motivate somebody to actually change and suddenly say, I need some help, and got on the phone. So sometimes people are a little bit oblivious to that, as well as partly what this group intervention model does too, is say, we're calling you all together in a room, and we're the police and we're the government and we're social services, because we know what you've been up to, and there's consequences legally if this continues, but we also want to try to get you out of that. So that's part of the model. And I just want people to know it is focused on the statistics and the crisis that we're in now, and the group violence intervention model is aimed at trying to get those people and say, either you get help or we're going to help you get off the street or whatever and change your way. And I didn't mean to take your 2 slides off.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So thank you. This has been a wonderful warm-up to the next 2 slides, the group intervention recommendations. So the mayor is recommending $140,000 in ongoing funding for operating costs for the group violence intervention program. And as Councilmember Gordon mentioned, this is a collaboration between the department, the health department, the police department, and community members. And it's essential to have those 3 component parts for it to work. It is a best practice that has been recognized by a number of the organizations that we are affiliated with. It aligns with all kinds of national organizations as well as our blueprint. And so this ongoing funding will allow us to fund 2 sites, one in North Minneapolis, one in South Minneapolis, and provide the essential program coordination and provision of community-based supports for the engaged participants. I won't spend time talking about how it works because I think you've heard that from Councilmember Gordon. But if you have additional questions on how the program itself works, I would be happy to answer those questions. The second mayor's recommendation related to the group violence intervention is for some one-time funding to jumpstart this program to really help us develop the communication plan, because as I said, one of the 3 very important component parts of this is the community. And so we want to work with the community to talk about what this program is and identify the community support for it. And also to identify those resources within the community that would help people if they do choose a different path and they want some help with doing that. Recently, we have heard that the city has also received an OJJDP 2-year grant related to group violence intervention. And so this mayor's recommended funding will help us leverage and jumpstart those efforts in combination with that new grant.
I'm sorry, Commissioner. Just checking who's that. I see Councilmember Yang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Commissioner Musicant. For myself, when I look at these issues related to group violence intervention or youth violence prevention, every single year, we have an issue related to, what's called the summer strategy for the North Side to curb violence on the North Side. And, I was surprised this year that, there was a story after a shooting up on the North Side sometime in May where, one of the folks from public health said something to the effect of like, we have no strategy right now. And, I'm just thinking like, if the health department is putting itself in, I guess, in the situation where, you're looking at violence as a public health crisis as well. I'm wondering, it would be nice to see the public health department be a part of the, I guess, strategizing or getting to the point of having a summer strategy as well on the North Side, just because, we can throw all this money at, every single great program that's out there. And, for some reason, we still have the violence that is happening up there. And so, as Council President Johnson said, we have to do things differently. And I'm wondering, if that has to look different or has to be different to get to that point, because certainly it's still happening.
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Yang, thank you for your comments. I'd have to be reminded about that quote, but I do feel that we are heavily engaged with others in thinking about summers and the community. There is an issue of resources, and we have tried through the years of the blueprint, and I think we have, as a city, demonstrated great persistence in using this model of prevention of youth violence, while at the same time we have an intervention model from the police, and they're complementary. We have just yesterday, the Youth Violence Prevention Executive Committee had a conversation about responding in the crisis mode to when a young person is injured in the community, and I think that's one component part we haven't fully fleshed out as a city. And so perhaps that comment was related to that. But yes, we are definitely interested in feedback and assessments of how we're doing. We are also putting together Results Minneapolis around youth violence prevention coming up this fall that I hope you will be a part of and think with us about what's going on, what are we trying, what's working, what's not working. So I'm going to move on. If there are no more questions on that, to a recommendation of some one-time funding from the mayor for $150,000 for a group violence intervention program. This is something we already have that's funded to some extent by a general fund, and so this would be a bump to recognize the growing demand for this service. And so it's something that is organized around helping young people who are at risk for creating violence or being victims of violence and long-term case management for them. It has become an integral part and extension of the police. Let's see. Oh, I'm on the wrong slide. Inspiring Youth. Okay, let me name it right, but that's what I was talking about. It's the Inspiring Youth Program. So that's a $60,000 one-time funding. But what I said was true. This is because of the increased demand for the services for this program. It's become really a critical supplement to the police department's juvenile diversion program, which is a short-term program. And so this allows for those young people that have longer-term needs to have those addressed so they can stay going on the straight and narrow, if you will. We also know that a new program that the Hennepin County Government Center, or HCMC, the hospital, has created called Next Step, is a hospital-based intervention program. Will probably build a demand for this work, this Inspiring Youth program, as well as the GVI program that we just discussed. So we hope that all these things work collaboratively, and this one-time funding will allow us to provide the services that have been, where there's a pent-up demand, and also respond to these new and emerging demands for the service. We have found that in its first year of implementation, that those who have participated for 9 months is a decrease in trouble with the police and decrease in other risk factors as well. So on to another program area, Healthy Living. There's a recommendation.
Excuse me, Commissioner.
Yes.
Before you launch into
Yes.
The Cedar Riverside, Councilmember Bender.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to note, as you wrapped up that kind of first bucket, that I have the perspective, I think potentially again because of the presentations that we get to have at the HESA committee from your department, that the health department actually does a very good job of setting specific outcomes and measuring progress toward those outcomes. So I'm looking forward to seeing the presentation on Monday about some of this youth violent prevention work. I think we've all watched that violence in our city has increased, and some of these upstream interventions may seem like, plugging holes in a wall, but I think that we can't not do them. I think that they are so important in a time when we're seeing the downstream impacts of cycles of violence and poverty, particularly in our communities of color, and that these are some of the most directed investments that we make upstream in trying to help youth break those cycles of violence and poverty. And so I think we're relying on your professional recommendations based on the research that your department does, based on your experiences with programs in the past and those measurements of those programs, that these are the things that you think are the most impactful. And if folks have other ideas, that may be the case, but I think there's a strong case to be made that these are very important investments that, compared to spending that we make in other departments, these are very, very small investments that are critically important to avoid continued increase in violence and poverty.
Thank you very much. So in the area of Healthy Living, the mayor's recommending a $10,000 one-time funding to increase provision and promotion of physical activity opportunities in Cedar Riverside. We're working with the Cedar Riverside community. We've identified quite an appetite and need for exercise options that are senior-friendly, culturally appropriate for East African women and for Korean residents. And so we're working with community-based agencies to expand what their offerings, doing policy, system, and environmental change. The funding that supports this work will not allow us to do programmatic funding, and so we think this one-time infusion of general fund dollars will help to launch this expansion of community-based efforts and systematize them so that they are available in the long run. Next area is lead in healthy homes. As you may recall, in 2015, we began to intervene. The recommendation from the mayor is $110,000 in one-time funding for 1 FTE of a lead risk assessor. In 2015, we lowered the level of blood lead that we use in order to intervene from 10, it had been 10 to 5 micrograms per deciliter. We thought that this would result in a one-time kind of blip in a larger caseload. It's resulted in a almost 250% increase in our caseload, and it has not abated. And so there was one-time funding in 15 and again in 16. All indications are that this higher level of cases will continue, and so the recommendation is again for 2017.
Commissioner, you mentioned the change between 5 micrograms to 10 micrograms, and you said we did that. Was that something the commission or the health department decided on, or is that state or county policies?
Mr. Chair, the state health department lowered the rate at which you could choose to intervene, and so we took advantage of that opportunity at the city level.
Very good. Council President Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a curiosity, Ms. Musican, about lead, and as you say, the caseload is going up. When lead has been removed from paint for many, many years and out of gasoline and all that sort of thing, to what do you attribute that? I mean, just the holdover of homes that haven't been treated, or?
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Johnson, yes, any home that was built before 1970 probably has paint on it that's underneath some other paint, perhaps, that has lead in it. And so it's particularly a problem in windows, because windows, we move up and down, and we create dust. And so the dust that's created from that old paint that's hidden under a few layers of something else then is on stuff. And we know that very young children who are highly susceptible to the intoxicating or the toxic effects of lead also are mouthers. They explore their environment by putting things in their mouths. And so it isn't children eating chips of paint or anything else, but it's the dust. And so if we can go in and we can actually give a home a new window that has no old paint on it, that's all new, we can really create a different rental environment so that additional families that might show up in that same rental unit are not going to have risks for their children.
Do we have outcomes again we've been involved in lead remediation for a really long time through federal grants and our own dollars. Do we have statistics to show? I mean, I get where if you reduce the level of where you treat, you're going to increase your caseload. But I mean, do we have statistics to show that we've treated this many households and homes, and that's helping? Or I mean, are we just creating more of a problem by? I know but what's a good lead level is 0. But anyway, I'm just curious about how you evaluate if you're changing your dynamics of what's a problem. Then how do you evaluate that you're making progress then on the city's existing housing stock, which is a finite number? How many houses have we treated? Has that been helpful? Do you measure lead levels in homes where they have been treated? Have we had repeats where kids were in their 1 year treated and then moved on, and someone else came out of that home with a lead level problem?
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Johnson, yes, we have begun to do some mapping of the city to see where, which communities we have changed the housing stock in, and we are also exploring strategies like going door to door to do more inspections that are not reliant on children being poisoned first, because that's the program as it stands now, which is why it's so important to have lowered the lead level, because we were relying on poisoned children, and at least they're a little less poisoned now when we intervene. But we know that lead poisoning impacts violence. So it changes the brain, and so it increases the likelihood of violence. It decreases school success, and so it's really important we continue to work on this. But you're right, we need to use as many different strategies as possible, because we do have a really high proportion of our housing stock is built before 1970. And so it's a daunting task to fix it all. So we are also working on ideas around health promotion messages around nutrition, because we know that if a young child's diet is high in calcium and iron, that their body is less likely to absorb the lead. And so we want to fix the housing, but we also want to help families protect their children to the best extent that they can. If they are.
I'd be interested in seeing that mapping, because I'm just curious whether, if we've treated a lot of apartment buildings, or if we've treated in North Minneapolis, at least the rental housing stock is almost exclusively single-family homes. It'd be interesting to me to see where the dollars have gone. So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner, it's been a robust conversation, and I certainly don't want to reduce that, but I just want to point out the time. So I just wanted to alert you to that, and before that, I'll violate my own comment and go back to the lead conversation, because certainly any lead poisoning is too much lead poisoning. But this additional funding, one-time funding, is for an assessor of somebody to go out and do some kinds of inspections or field work to do that.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't remediate anything. But some of the work that we've already got going on allows that identified opportunity to go in and be remediated. I just didn't want to say we're just going to go out and evaluate which needs lead remediation, but we have programs in place to remediate those.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we have HUD funding that helps us actually come in and remediate the homes, but we need people to go make that assessment.
Thank you. I won't interrupt you again.
Okay, so we have, I think, just 3 left, so hopefully I can be, although they are significant. So the first one is in food, lodging, and pools. We need more health inspectors because of the growth in the industry. The recommendation is $165,000 of ongoing funding for 1 new health inspector and 1 clerical support position who would manage the data entry and keep pace, and all of this would help us keep pace with industry growth. We have a thriving food and lodging industry here in Minneapolis, and there's been an increase of $1.3 million in city tax revenue and fee revenue in 2015 over the previous year. So we have, financial growth as a result of this. We need to spend some of it on making sure that things are healthy. The number of health inspection establishments in 2015 increased by 625 over the previous year. The number of licenses inspected by health increased 21% over 2 years. And we have seen continued growth. The U.S. Bank Stadium itself just brought 140 new establishments within the stadium. And we know that the State Health Department is going to create a new food code, which will create more flexibility for businesses, but will also create a greater burden for inspectors, increasing our workload. We have 2 delegated agreements that we work under. One is from the State Health Department. We've received good and high marks from them. We also have a delegated agreement with the Agriculture Department, and we've done an internal audit and showed that we really are not meeting their expectations for inspection frequency. So our staffing levels are far behind national standards and our regional partners. We have 1 inspector for every 300 establishments, which is 33% higher than the FDA recommendation. It would take 7 additional inspectors to get to the FDA level. We've worked really hard to be an efficient organization, working on education and outreach and trying to make the folks that run our food businesses, really up to speed on what they need to do. Despite these efficiencies, it really would take us 3 additional inspectors to really maintain the inspection frequency that we need, given the kind of growth we have. As you see, the recommendation is for 1 inspector and 1 clerical support position. You can see on the next slide a graphic that shows a widening gap between a number of inspectors and the FDA recommended number of inspectors, and also quite a large gap between the license revenue and the staffing levels and the trajectory of the 2 graphs. Final two areas of.
Gretchen?
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson had a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner, just want to say how thankful I am for all the great work being done by health inspections. I think it's one of those things that it's easy for people to forget about when they have such confidence going out to eat and they just assume, oh, it's just always been that way. But I know that our inspectors do tremendous work at catching problems before they arise to the level of people getting sick and ultimately ending up in the hospital or even worse. And so I just wanted to say I'm supportive of, and I hope I can find some other colleagues that are supportive of getting you the needed inspectors in order to meet those minimum standards. And it is really a core service and something that I believe our constituents expect out of us and something that we need to step up to as we continue to grow our industry. And we're very thankful for our great restaurant industry, but part of that as well is making sure that all those restaurants are safe for everyone. So I just wanted to make those comments and say thank you to the whole team for all the hard work they do.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Mr. Johnson, I will convey that on your behalf. So the final two recommendations are in the area of environmental services. The first one is $17,000 for one-time funding to really put into our new electronic land management system all this paper records we have of existing wells and underground storage tanks. Without doing that, we won't be able to really see where we have opportunities to abate some of those situations when there is a change of ownership or some redevelopment of a property. And so this is a one-time investment. The switch over to the ELM system is kind of a unique opportunity. And so I think it makes sense to invest in that at this point in time. The second and final area is a recommendation of pollution reduction initiatives. And this is $255,000 for one-time funding for pollution reduction efforts for businesses that pay the PCAR, which is the Pollution Control Annual Registration Fee. There were some revisions of this made in 2016 by the City Council, and those revisions will result in an estimated $340,000 additional dollars in 2017, and so clearly this recommendation will be covered by that increase. So these PCAR fees are pollution impact fees paid to the city by a polluting business and industry. And they support both the inspection services, but they also support environmental initiatives that are directed at reducing pollution and the impact on residents. So we don't want to just fine people, but we want to use and invest some of that resource into reducing the pollution. And so these changes that were made in 2016 will increase the fees paid by the garbage burner, XL, NRG, heat fuel consumption, and there are some additional fees for fuel tanks and wells. And so we want to add to our green business cost share model an approach that will also reduce energy use. And we expect that we would be able to, with this program, eliminate an estimated 4,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide emissions per year as a result of helping businesses convert their practices. And so you'll see in this last graph, the existing green business program has really an amazing acceleration of impact. And in 2016, we expect that by working with businesses, helping them change their practices, we have reduced annually 33,000 pounds of volatile organic compounds being released into our neighborhoods. These are not smokestacks. These are not remote polluters. These are in our neighborhoods. You'll also see in the graph that's next to it that the blue line tracks the revenue increase, and with this mayor's recommendation, the dotted line will mirror that trajectory, but still leave the city other resources to do other things. And at the bottom, our projected savings in energy efficiency are equal to reducing vehicles on the street, or gallons of gasoline used, or trees planted. So that completes my presentation of the mayor's recommendations.
Thank you very much. Just opportunity for colleagues for final questions for Commissioner Musicant. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Commissioner. I just had a question because I didn't see any details on it in the budget book, but I noticed that there was an operating cost increase of $454,000 over last year, and I was just curious if there or what that's about.
Ms. Music,
Mr. Chair,
I'm
Councilmember Johnson?
going to look down to Ms. Green. Is there something that you can identify for Councilmember Johnson?
Councilmember Johnson, the increases in the budget is all of the change items that the commissioner has mentioned.
Specifically the one-time
It's
change
the
items
it's the one time as well as the ongoing cost.
that are added into operating costs and rather than contractual services or salaries and wages for the FTE increases.
Meaning, if you're only talking about when you said, I apologize, I thought you were talking about the total budget, but you're just talking about a line item. And if you're just talking about a line item, I'll have to go and look at that and be able to give you a reply to that question.
Okay, yeah, maybe we could connect
Okay.
up during this.
Good
Thank you
question.
very much for the presentation.
Thanks very much for that. Councilmember Gordon.
Well, I just sort of wanted to put this out there from the blue. I think the school-based clinics is one of the great programs that we have going. And I know that we talk about how they're in all the high schools, but they're in the major high schools, I guess. There's been some interest in seeing if we can't expand that, for example, into the Wellstone International High School. So I might be curious at some future later date to hear about what that might cost and what kind of challenges that might pose for us. You don't have to answer that right now.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much, Commissioner. I think our next presentation is from the City Attorney's Office. We'll let Ms. Siegel a little transition time as we get our new slide set up.
Sure, sure. That'd be great. Thanks. There we go. Good morning, Mr. Chair. The City Attorney's Office. One thing to remember about our office is that our budget is split into, has two different, very different sources. Our civil division is supported by the self-insurance fund, and we're in an internal service division, and the criminal division is supported by the general fund. So all the items, the change items we're talking about, all relate to our criminal division, and they are general fund items. And we're not contemplating any significant changes in our civil division function over the next year in terms of we're going to repurpose some position, fill some vacancies, but otherwise no significant changes that we've requested or asked for. So our criminal division, we have split into two programs. The first is our community attorney program. The community attorney program involves prosecutors who are housed in each of our 5 police precincts. They work with the precincts and with the community and neighborhood safety groups, local business associations on building strategies and addressing the priority public safety concerns and crime concerns in the different areas of the city. The first change item there going into our community attorney program is restoring some reductions. First is to restore a $200,000 reduction made in our 2016 budget. If that was continued this year, we would have to reduce staffing. Second is over time, part of our community, 2 of our community attorneys at least have been funded through the federal formula grant under the Burn Justice Assistance Grant Program. As we know, with all federal grant programs, this has been reduced substantially in size over the last 10 years. It's been reduced by over half. And so with this additional $110,000 in ongoing funding,
we'll be able to maintain our community attorney program at its current complement going forward into the future. As measures, we have a whole bunch of measures in our criminal division. I just included a few in our PowerPoint here. But one thing that we've done and has really been innovative around the country, and we have other jurisdictions calling us to ask about it and get information, is the way we deal with chronic lower level offenders. We have the citywide 200 program that we were seeing reduced impact on reductions in recidivism in 2013 with a combination of city funds and the county contributing the balance of a probation officer salary. We've gotten the reductions in recidivism back up with active probation supervision, freeing up all areas of the system from having to deal with the revolving door of in and out. In the downtown area, in the first precinct, we've had this focus on young adult chronic offenders, often homeless. In the 18 to 24-year-old range, we work with local, with partners of youth-serving agencies, the Link, Youth Link, and others. And there we've seen a ongoing significant reduction in recidivism, and not only that, but kids who are connected with services that they need. There's a couple who have become downtown DID ambassadors, youth ambassadors, and are attending MCTC, for example. So huge success story there and really positive long-term impacts. And then the slide I'm perhaps most proud of that I think Jessica Casper is here in our office, helped me as I want to visually show that we have achieved our goal of long-term reductions in recidivism through our Downtown 100 and Focus 1824 program. And these lines show that these people are only in our Downtown 100 program for 1 year, but we see ongoing reductions in new offenses committed by this group. And so I am extremely proud of the excellent work of my office and appreciate the assistance of Jessica in figuring out how to show this graphically, with lots of dollars in savings to all parts of the system as a result, as well as healthier, safer outcomes for these individuals. Something else that we've worked on collaboratively with the courts and with the county and social service providers is the Holmes Court, which is a problem-solving court for defendants experiencing homelessness. And here's just some data that the court pulled from 2014 on the kind of results achieved there. Our other program in the criminal division is, of course, criminal prosecution. There, it continues to be a really high volume part of our office, although the number of overall offenses that we handle has gone down over the years. And it's about, I think, 18,500, something like that over the last year. Change items there is we have had $45,000 in ongoing funding in our budget to support restorative justice and diversion programs. We asked the mayor to increase that funding on an ongoing basis. The mayor recommended and the city council eagerly approved additional one-time funding in our 2016 budget. This will bring us up to $100,000 in ongoing funds for restorative justice and diversion programs. And this serves both juveniles as part of the Minneapolis Police Department's pre-charge diversion program, as well as the adults who we deal with in our office.
Ms. Siegel, thank you for that. Councilmember Gordon, I'm not sure if that was left.
I'm sorry.
My mistake. Okay. Please continue.
And then with our diversion programs, the council funded a diversion coordinator position in our office, who has been in place for almost a full year now, and we're already seeing results from that position with significant increases in diversion referrals, 210% in the first year, and we're on track for an additional 30% increase this year. We're still working on trying to get those numbers up even further. We've added new programs this year. We added the Interact program, which is for misdemeanor, non-force involved obstruction of legal process cases. We've had 43 referrals to this program year to date this year alone. And for our driving after suspension or revocation diversion program, we've had 3,800 referrals over 2 years, 2013 to 2015. And we continue to add to our offerings there. And as I've spoken about before to the council, beginning in 2017, with this diversion coordinator and the charging team that the council has previously funded, we'll be able to move to pre-charge diversion. That is when Hennepin Justice Integration Project technology project will be completed, so we'll be able to move to pre-charge diversion beginning at the end of this year, which we're very excited about. Something else that I want to put a little bit of focus on is the legislature this last year altered the law with regard to drug cases. Fifth-degree drug possession was reduced from a felony to a gross misdemeanor. And in Ramsey and Hennepin counties, they put the jurisdiction for those cases with the city attorneys in those two counties. The rest of the state, the county attorney's offices will continue to be responsible. We are obligated by law to offer diversion in these cases. These are, really small amounts of controlled substances, and we would want to do that regardless. But it is an unfunded mandate, if you will, something we voluntarily are entering into. We want to be able, we want a diversion provider, and we're in the process of finalizing a contract with the diversion provider to be able to offer assessment and treatment options that will cost money. We will keep an eye on this, see how many cases we've got, but we may be back mid-year for supplemental funding, depending on how things shape out and what our needs are in that area. Another change item, one-time change item, is to deal with street-level prostitution, particularly on Lake Street in South Minneapolis. And we're going to begin offering pre-charge diversion services and expand the street outreach that the 3rd Precinct of the Minneapolis Police Department has been participating in, actually initiated, to make sure we've got culturally specific street outreach people out there helping, as well as to be able to offer this option of pre-charge diversion. This is a pilot, and we will see how it goes. We offer, and there is a studied, researched, effective program in Hennepin County District Court for prostituted women, the GIFT program that we are energetic supporters of, and we offer that to all defendants regardless of the number of prior convictions. And for individuals who successfully complete that program, we assist them in expunging any prostitution convictions. Another change item, one-time item, is to implement community-based consequence for carrying a pistol without a permit. The defendants in this area tend to be largely young males, 18 to 24, 25 years old, and significant percentage, and often it's their first adult level offense, and a significant percentage go on to commit more serious violent offenses after. So we want something more effective than time in the workhouse. We're about to issue a request for proposal, and this funding will help fund this alternate community-based consequence, and as well as an additional $20,000 to research and implement some additional gun violence reduction strategies that the mayor's included in our budget, recommended budget. A carryover item, again, this is one-time funding for our 2017 budget, but we've gotten funding for this pilot the last couple of years, is for our violent crime hotspots, domestic violence pilot. And I don't think Michelle Jacobson is here. She's the head of my domestic violence team, and is just a really talented innovator in the area, in the field, and highly respected in the field of domestic violence. And we're learning some really helpful and useful information from this pilot. And we've gotten some numbers back that Michelle has pulled that shows we're making a real difference for those families where a follow-up visit was successfully made with a police officer and a family therapist. We've seen a significant decline in repeat 911 calls. So 13 to 14% in repeat 911 calls for addresses where we had a successful visit, and 27% for those that we did not. And so anything we can do in these violent crime hotspots where there's also this high incidence of calls for service related to domestic violence will help. We are working closely with the county on expanding this to include what we're calling a family navigator, who is somebody, a county social worker, to partner with 4th Precinct police officers so that police officers can give real-time information when they're responding to calls that aren't necessarily criminal calls. People want, the family wants a child who's out of control removed from the house. They want help removing somebody from the house. And we found with these follow-up visits that people don't know where to go for services, and this proactive approach of having a face with the name of somebody who they know they can call rather than a virtual front door, we think is a really promising model to study, and the county has been very receptive, and we're hopeful that they will find some funds, whether through budgeting or through a grant program, to try out that model. Now, instead of just asking for money, I did want to talk about how we've achieved some efficiencies. And in recent years, we have either eliminated and or repurposed at least 4 positions. And for example, one thing we're in the process of doing now is we've had a receptionist who has done a variety of tasks in our office, as well as greeting people who come and making sure they get to the right person. We're using a combination of 311 to answer almost all of the calls coming into our office, so that there's a whole list of questions they are able to answer without needing to take up attorney time or receptionist time, and to direct the calls to the right people. So we're repurposing this receptionist position into a paralegal position in our criminal division to help us deal with body-worn cameras. So I just want to point out we are trying to be efficient, and that actually we have been able to do this repurposing or elimination in large, at least